Joining me right now. I've so enjoyed his line of questioning whenever he has spoken, whether it's Mayorkas, whether it's anyone at CDC, with Fauci, at NIH. Senator Rand Paul joins us now. Senator, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, as you heard from this audio soundbite, out of all of those numbers that they were listing, there had been one individual that had been vaccinated, or all of them, sorry, had been vaccinated, one that hadn't been vaccinated. And this kind of comes into the question that you've discussed quite a bit, is the importance of like, if people want to get vaccinated, that's their choice. But mandating something, it just seems to me that if the government, Senator, is going to mandate that you get an injection, that injection ought to do what they claim that it will do. And so far from the CDC, we haven't seen that. Your thoughts?
Well, this gets to my point. Every individual is different. Age groups are different. And your risks you evaluate individually, and in a free country, you make your decisions based on what you perceive your risk to be. So if you're over 65, 90% of those over 65 have decided voluntarily that they think the risks of the disease are much greater than any possible problem with the vaccine, and 90% of people voluntarily took the vaccine. Over age 50, 75% of people over 50 have taken it. But it's also different if you're under 15. If you're under 25, the death rate is about 1 in a million. So why would we want to mandate it to people where the death rate is very low? Why would we want to mandate it to people who've already had the disease? Studies out of Israel now show that if you've gotten the disease naturally, if you've been unlucky but you've gotten it and you've survived, that your immunity actually is equal to or exceeds the vaccine. One study said 27 times better. And that's not an argument against the vaccine. It's just an argument that we should count these people in our statistics. Because if you don't count 100 million Americans who got it naturally, then you're like Dr. Fauci and wringing your hands and saying, oh my, we must force inoculation. We must force vaccine on children because not enough people have been vaccinated. The truth is we were very close to controlling this. In May, June, when we got down to less than 10,000 cases, we were almost there. And then the virus eluded or evolved around the vaccine, and it's able to penetrate the defenses of the vaccine. So it's not only the lack of vaccination, unvaccinated is part of it, but it's also that the vaccine has eluded us. So the real answer right now is probably allowing a new vaccine to come forward. Instead, they're wanting to sell you last year's news, the old vaccine as a booster, but it doesn't really affect the Delta variant as well as the new one will. So just like with the flu, we get a new vaccine each year, there is a Delta vaccine out there. And what they should do, instead of trying to mandate that your newborn get a shot before they leave the hospital of a vaccine that's now a year old, they should be following Trump's predicate and doing an actual Operation Warp Speed for a new vaccine, a new Delta variant. It's already made. We just have to get it through the red tape now.
That's a great point. We're talking with Senator Rand Paul because, I play a scientist and a medical researcher on air. So I'm looking at this and just hearing from some of your line of questioning with Fauci previously and hearing some of these other medical experts. I mean, you're an actual doctor, so you kind of know a little bit about this. I don't understand how they could claim that one vaccine could apply to another mutation when there hasn't been any of the genome sequencing. They haven't been able to do anything that actually directs it towards that mutation.
Well, there's partial overlap. So what I would say is the vaccine is still of value. If you're over 65, I recommend that people get vaccinated voluntarily. Right. I'm not mandating anybody, but my suggestion, if you're over 65, I would be vaccinated, even though it's imperfect. Because let's say you get some immune response, means you can still be infected, but you have some pre-existing immune response, even if it's partial. It's better than not having any. The problem is we also don't know who this affects. There's random people that probably have some genetic predisposition to having an overly exuberant immune response and their lungs become filled with fluid. We don't yet know who those people are. There are more of them over 65 than under. But one of the things we could do, and that I've been promoting, not that Dr. Fauci will listen, is we need to find a group of people that don't usually die, but unfortunately have died from this. Let's say under age 40, find 100 people who died from COVID, and then under age 40, find the people who had it and had no symptoms. Genetically sequence all of those people and say, could we find a genetic sequence that helps us find the unusual person that's got some kind of genetic predisposition? There is going to be an anomaly that could be found. We have the ability to go through your entire genome in a day. We can take a DNA sample of your cells in your body, and we can go through the whole sequence in a day. So it's automated, and the machines can do this for us. So we could really, in a relatively short time, compare and try to find what is the anomaly that allows somebody to have no symptoms and somebody else to die from this disease.
That's been part of the questions that we have been throwing back and forth here. Like, what are the is there genetic predisposition that makes someone react in a certain way? And that's a great point that you just had. A quick question for you on this, and then I want to get into some of the FISA warrants and the droning, which I really appreciated your remarks on that earlier on the issue. Why is there no importance placed on natural immunity? Why is that treated as though it's either non-existent or it is somehow inferior to that antibodies produced by vaccines?
Dr. Fauci's dissembling, but he's lying to you for the greater good. So he believes that he's, Plato's reincarnation, and that the masses aren't smart enough to make a decision on being vaccinated. He really wants you to be vaccinated, and by and large, the advice to be vaccinated is good. But he's afraid if he tells you that natural immunity works, that you might not be vaccinated if you've already gotten it. He knows that you're protected, but what he's doing is he's thinking, what's the simplest way to get the beehive, the collective, entirely vaccinated? Let's don't let them think about it. Let's don't let them noodle through how to take it. Because some, like Dr. McCary, who have made some good points of advice, he says, well, you probably don't need it, but if you're going to take it, maybe one dose. And Dr. Fauci is aghast. He's like, oh, no, we don't want anybody thinking about this. Just do what you're told. So blind submission is what this is about. It isn't about science, because the interesting part of the science is that, yes, natural infection does provide, once you've had COVID, a great deal of immunity, at least as much as the vaccine. For a year, they came to me. Every reporter in the halls of Congress came to me and said, well, you don't know how long it'll last. And I would look at them and say, yeah, but you don't know how long the vaccine will last either. It's like, I'm not condemning the vaccine. I actually think it works. Why are condemning nature's vaccine, which I got, and saying it doesn't work when I'm not saying that the vaccine is going to run out and we won't know till over time? And I've also told people I'm not adamantly opposed. I've not been vaccinated yet. But over the next couple of months, if the Delta variant starts killing people like me who have been infected and it looks like I need to be vaccinated, I probably will, but I'll probably try to get the Delta vaccine because I've already been inoculated to the wild variant. My susceptibility, if I have any, is probably to the Delta variant. Why would I want to take the old vaccine when I think the new one is what I need and what most elderly people are going to need is a booster of the new vaccine? So really what we should be doing is, it's exactly the same technology. I don't know how the flu vaccine gets approved so quickly. How do we get a flu vaccine every year? And they're saying, oh, it's going to take another year to get a Delta vaccine. By then we may be on to Mu or Rho or some other Greek letter. So, I think we should be talking about this, and not enough people are talking about where's the Delta vaccine and what's it going to take to let the government allow it to be approved sooner.
Now we're talking
for voluntary.
Yes, we're talking with Senator Rand Paul. Yes, definitely for that decision-making process to be voluntary. And I have to say, Senator, this is more information that we've heard from you talking about this than any interview that we've heard, whether it's been on any of the networks talking to Fauci or talking to Walensky. I mean, it's just much more informative. They always get into politics and policy. And you are into policy, and you're actually getting more into the science and the medicinal side of it. I wanted to ask you also, you had a great line of questioning with DHS's Mayorkas. You had a great line of questioning with a number of officials in the Biden administration. One of the stories that I don't think is getting enough attention, thankfully you're giving it a lot of attention. August 29th, we droned 10 innocent people. 7 of those were children. Apparently, one of the man that was under surveillance looked like he was an ally of American soldiers, either an informant or a translator. This brings up a lot of questions about drone usage. I know it was a favorite tactic of Obama-Biden during that era, but I'm curious as to where this intelligence is coming from. If this is part of Joe Biden's over-the-horizon strategy, I really am concerned that we are relying upon the Taliban for this kind of stuff, and I worry about intelligence overall. It's a nightmare over there.
I don't think it's really over the horizon. I think it's more CYA. They screwed up so royally, they had to do something. They had to save face. in the horrible demise of 13 young men and women who defended our country, whose lives were lost because of the utter incompetence of Biden's generals, vacating Bagram Air Force Base that had concrete reinforced gates where soldiers would have had a fighting chance against an explosion, where they had a mile or two of visibility where they could have kept people away from gates. This wouldn't have happened at Bagram. So this was a military decision. But in the wake of the deaths of 13, I think they were like, we must do something. We must do something to draw attention away, to show that we are not inept, to show that we are not weak. We must act. We must look strong. But in their haste to look strong, they came out, looking foolish and also maybe endangering our country further. When you kill an innocent person and you kill 7, 10 children around that innocent person, they will remember this for decades and decades. Hundreds of villagers, hundreds of relatives will remember that the last act of the Americans in this long war, and I don't fault our soldiers. They're trying to do their best. I fault the politicians who gave them the order. And I want to know, actually, and I've asked this question, did Biden give the actual order to kill this person? Under Obama's era, they had flashcards. They went all the way up to Obama, and Obama would make the ultimate decision to kill somebody. Was Biden asked about the specific hit? Did he give a specific approval? So he can't turf this decision to some captain or colonel or whatever. I'm guessing he did make that ultimate decision. But what a terrible decision it was, and it was because it was done in haste. What would I have done? I would have bombed the crap out of Bagram. I would have destroyed every inch of runway, every plane, every helicopter, every warehouse full of automatic weapons. We have the ability to do it. Instead of a pinprick against a bomb against the wrong person, we should have bombed the main thing that people are unhappy about, leaving $80 billion worth of our equipment over there. So while the war needed to end, we needed to leave. Nobody in their worst nightmare could have imagined anyone as inept or any more inept withdrawal than what Biden did.
Yes, I'm talking with Senator Rand Paul. And Senator, the last topic here for you. I know you've spoken a lot about the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FISA Act. Everybody got very, very familiar with FISA and what FISA courts do after 2016 because maybe for the first time, everyone saw on a national stage just how petty politics had gotten when someone who was actually apparently working as a CIA asset was surveilled simply because they were involved as a private citizen in a political campaign. I like your response. Your response is just follow the Constitution. You don't need to be getting these FISA warrants to surveil people. Talk to us about that.
When Orwell wrote 1984, or even when I read it in the 1970s, one of the things that gave us consolation, those who worried about a government becoming this intrusive, we said, well, they don't have the technology. There's no two-way television sets. How could they monitor our every move? But now they do have that technology. And so some of us are very, very concerned with how that's used. We have the ability, and the NSA has actually done this, to retrieve the metadata of who you call and how long you talk to them for everyone, for millions and millions of Americans. They did it for years without telling us. That goes against the Fourth Amendment. It says you have to have an individual, you have to accuse them of an individual, you have to know what you're asking for, and there has to be probable cause. So I asked Director Wray this the other day. He says he's instituted reform so this doesn't happen again. And I said, well, the problem is as Hamilton said, men aren't angels. So we put rules in place, and we have judges and checks and balances, and we have the Fourth Amendment. And when you have a warrant, a FISA warrant, that's a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court warrant, it's a warrant that doesn't adhere to the Fourth Amendment. It says you have to have probable cause of a relationship with a foreign government. Well, everybody that runs for president is going to have foreign policy advisors that have been overseas. Some of them will have been ambassadors to other countries. They call and talk to other countries. We talk to our adversaries. Right. I've met with a Chinese ambassador. I've met with a Russian ambassador. I've met with dozens of ambassadors. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that. It's part of what diplomacy is. But the thing is that doesn't give the right of the government to say, oh, that person met with the Russian ambassador. We should get a special warrant that doesn't obey the Constitution. This was what was troubling about Director Wray. His response, you and I just disagree that the FISA court is constitutional. I think the FISA court is extra constitutional, and really I'm okay with it for foreigners, people outside of our borders. But American citizens should get the American Constitution. Right. You can still do things in secret. You can ask a judge to go into secret court. You can say, I want to eavesdrop on so-and-so. They're an American, and we think they're communicating with a foreigner, and they may be developing a bomb for terrorism. No federal judge in our land will deny you that warrant. You'll get it. But then at some point in time, if you've made a mistake or you get somebody that says they're innocent, you'll go to an open public court. You'll have an attorney on both sides. There'll be a record of it. And there'll be this adversarial process that gets to the truth through a jury. FISA never has that. So FISA is not constitutional for Americans. This is the reform I put forward. But Bill Barr and all the other people opposed me. Trump was leaning my way. But in the end, we never got the reform, which is FISA court shouldn't be used on Americans.
Right. There you go. And I loved that explanation as well. And I think it's incredibly important that people understand this, especially as things as this political heat, the cancel culture, using government agencies to settle scores. That heat keeps getting hotter. Senator Rand Paul, we so appreciate your fight in D.C. And we always look forward to you to your line of questioning whenever we see it come up. So we appreciate you. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.